Namaste. Welcome to service today, Satsang, on a nice rainy day. Today's subject is inner peace. And it's a subject that is one that's relevant to all people, not just people who are consciously on the spiritual path, but if you think about the ills of society, the world society, you have to say that one of the most pervasive challenges is a lack of peace, a lack of a consciousness of well-being. People live for stimulation, and stimulation does not lead to peace. And so people go on this endless search for well-being, and they think that maybe they can eat a better diet, or they can go to the spa, which is not necessarily a bad thing to do, but a spa day by itself, without a deeper level of connection to peace, is insufficient to balance out the rajasic activating energies of the world that people generally live in. We're going to listen to some words by Swami Kriyananda, and that will get us going, and then we'll share some more thoughts.
Welcome to A Way to Awakening, presented by Ananda Sangha.
A professor from Columbia University came to lunch with the master in his third-floor interview room at Mount Washington. I served them and was able afterward to sit in the room and take notes while they conversed. At a certain point in their discussion, the professor asked, "Do your teachings help people to be at peace with themselves?" "They do indeed," the master answered, "but that is the least that they do. We teach people above all how to be at peace with their Creator." Now, most people in the world today, in today's society, are trying to find how to be at peace with themselves. And for that reason, they don't find peace. You find, and this was in fact the mistake I made for many years, I was trying to find peace of mind, understanding without God. I thought I would find it in perfect politics, in perfect art, in perfect science, in perfect literature, in perfect music. Nowhere did I find it. It just didn't exist. Until I suddenly woke up one morning and realized that without God, life didn't really have any meaning. To be at peace with the Creator is just about the last thing that most systems today try to give to us. They try to say, for example, communism is a good example, because they don't even believe in God. And so they say that the more perfect our system, the more we will have of what we want as a society. Well, you can never have a perfect system, so the only way to imagine creating that kind of perfection is to kill off everybody who disagrees with you. Well, this seems to be the way of much of modern society. If it doesn't fit, lop off, like the old Procrustean story of Theseus back in the Greek days. Procrustes was a man who was a tyrant and a villain, and he had a very special bed. When he entertained guests, then he would bed them down in a special bed that he created. And if they were too long for the bed, then he would just bind them to the bed, lop off their legs, and let them bleed to death, and he had a great time. If they were too short, he would stretch them until they, screaming in agony, were long enough for the bed. Well, of course, all those old Greek stories were really allegories. They were intended to mean something more. This is what people do with logic. If logic doesn't apply to the facts, well, sort of bend the facts a little bit to fit the logic. If reality doesn't fit your theories, well, just sort of bend reality to fit the theories. But life goes on as it is, and we've got to learn. This is one of the wonderful things that I have seen in the philosophy of India. It's realistic. It doesn't pose theories to life. It poses the reality. It says, what is life? What does life ask of us? What are the realities? And then try to work within that framework. Well, the difficulty with that and logic is that logic is nice and fixed and framed. Whereas reality is always sort of, it's flexible. It breathes. It's a living thing. And you cannot say from one day to the next that it has to be or will be this way or that way. Now, in this thing here, Yogananda is teaching a basic teaching of his, which he came to the West to bring. How to be in tune, how to be at peace with a much larger reality. We are all a part of that reality. We don't have a separate reality. We are a part of the infinite ocean. And an image that he often used was the waves and the ocean. We are like waves on that ocean. The ocean is constant. The waves are very inconstant. Our job as human beings is to understand that we are a part of that much greater reality. As long as we try to live separate from one another, and this is how you see most people are in daily life, they look at one another and try to relate to people as they think they ought to be, for example. This, of course, is one of the problems in human existence. The reason people don't find happiness in life is because they place conditions on it. They say that, well, why can't it be this way? Why can't that person be the way I want him to be? How can the world be made in the image I want it to be? Well, it isn't. We have to learn to adjust to the world. We are just a part of a much larger scene. And you will see that most people, when you talk to them, they're always talking from their own reality. They don't even communicate. They're always talking about what they think you ought to be. If only you were this way. Why aren't you that way? Why can't you see my point of view? It would be very good to learn to listen to a larger reality. We are a part of the universe. We are a part of the infinite flow of time. Now, this is one of the wonderful things that I learned sitting at the feet of my guru. I used to be a very arrogant young man. And I used to think that the world had to fit into my little theories. And I found that it didn't. I found that life went on its own way, and people were what they were. And as a result, I often got upset with other people, got upset with life, got upset with why are things this way, why can't they be that way? Bit by bit, I learned that life just is. Now, how do we get to learn to know how to be a part of that greater reality? How do we become a part of that infinite peace? How do we make peace with the universe and with our Creator? Well, that's what he came to teach. He came to teach us how to meditate. He came to teach us how to listen. How to listen, first of all, to God. Yes, God has a sound. It's not as if he were up there speaking in the clouds. But there is an Om sound, the infinite vibration of the universe that we are a part of. And in deep meditation, or, if you go into a quiet place in the countryside, let's say, where there's not a sound anywhere, you can hear sometimes a sort of a still hush. And behind that stillness, you begin to hear a sound, maybe a deep roar, maybe a sound like, or like wind in the trees, or it's a sound underneath everything. That sound which if you could eliminate every sound in the universe, every sound in the world around you, I should say, you would hear that sound and it's talking to you. There is a way to learn to communicate by listening quietly in deep meditation, closing your ears, listening to the inner sound in the right ear. You can begin to hear that the voice of God, the presence of God, is very real. And as you listen to that sound more deeply, you begin to feel that there are many, many different levels of reality of which all of us are a part. These levels of reality are within ourselves, yes, because first of all, when you quiet your mind, you find that the mind is not anything but quiet. It makes a lot of hubbub. But bit by bit, as you quiet the mind, you begin to feel that there's a peace welling up inside you.
Swamiji used to describe us skiers. He was quite a good skier. And he said he met this one woman on the slopes. She was having trouble. And he said to her, be in your center. Learn to stand in your center. And if you're in your center, then you can adjust. But if you are already off balance, if you're outside of your center, then it's much more easy to fall. More likely that a little bump in the path will knock you down. And the key here is to understand what center is. And it's something that very few of us were, I don't ever remember anybody mentioning or having a class in school on how to center yourself and what that might mean. In the video that everyone here isn't seeing, but the people who see this online will see, Swamiji reads a story about Yoganandaji, and a professor came to visit Yogananda and asked the question about peace. Can you experience peace? And Master said that absolutely, that it's our own true nature, and that it's something that we have to actively connect to, and that the source of that peace is a universal consciousness. It's not beautiful scenery. It's not, even though we can go to places that do invoke a certain level of peacefulness, the peacefulness that we feel is not that the scenery or the environment itself. It's that environment has probably less distractions so that we can see what is naturally there. Let me explain what I mean by this. When I was a young man, most of you know, you may be tired of hearing, that I was a surfer in California. And I wasn't very good at surfing for a long time. Seriously, I was not a natural surfer. I loved being out on the ocean and in the water, but I was really pretty bad at it for quite a few years. And so, while all the other guys were actually riding waves, to me surfing was going out in the water and sitting for a long time. And much less about riding the waves, because usually if I went out for 2 hours, I might catch one to three waves in 2 hours. And always I would fall off at some point. So I would wipe out, and but it was exciting when I caught the wave. I mean, I was into it. I was motivated enough to stay out there all that time. But during all that time when I was out there, I was sitting on my surfboard, sort of bobbing up and down like little boats do. And I was being. I wasn't thinking. I was generally looking for waves, but often when you're surfing, the waves have quite some time between when they come. So you're just, looking around. And what you find nature. You find nature without all of the stimulants of civilization. And so suddenly the breeze is blowing and the birds are squawking and the sound of the ocean is just generally there in the background, and the waves are gently rocking you, and it's peaceful. It's well, I should say it this way, it's not agitating. Okay, it's not agitating. But what I found is that I began to have this experience where it's not just observing, like I'm here and nature is there. It's an experience of communion, an experience of oneness, a sense of belonging, being a part of. You begin to realize that we are a part of nature. And what is nature? Nature is the creation. The creation is the dream of the omnipresent eternal consciousness that we usually use the word God. But we have to get out of the idea that God is any of the descriptions that we read about. Because no single description, no 1,000 descriptions of God can encompass infinity. We use these descriptions to try to grasp something that cannot be grasped with the mind. It can only be communed with the spirit. The recognition that we, each and every one of us, are a part of that infinite whole. That this is who and what we are. We are not just human beings trotting through society on this date, in this age. We are parts of the eternal reality of life itself. When we begin to realize that, then we can begin to commune with deeper and deeper levels of that reality. Now, when I was bobbing up and down on the ocean, I began to feel this sense of life underneath all of this. And I began to actively, one of the things that you need to do in surfing is anticipate the waves coming in, especially if there's other surfers who are out there. Because everybody wants to ride the same waves. So if you have some intuitive ability to guess where's the best spot to be when the next wave comes, then you're going to be there and others won't, and you'll get better opportunities. So as a part of this surfing experience and communing with nature, I began to inwardly reach out. Inwardly reach out. This was not any kind of spiritual training that I had. This was an openness to the circumstance. And I inwardly reached out and tried to anticipate. I tried to intuit when and where the next wave would be. And sometimes I had success, sometimes I didn't. And you could say that it was just chance. That even though I thought I was communing, it was just chance. But the fact is over a period of time, I began to actually be able to do it. And I realized that same inward reaching out was something that I could use all the time, in all circumstances, not just in surfing. To anticipate, to be a part of what was happening in life around me. And only to discover that this, in fact, is the teachings, the yoga teachings. One of the ways that we talk about this inward reaching out for intuitive perception. The yogic teachings, these principles are not true because the yogic teachings say so. The yogic teachings say so because they're true. You see? So they don't belong to the yogic teachings. These principles don't belong to Hinduism or Christianity or any entity. It's truth. It's life. It's the actual reality of what's going on. So the yogic teachings say that we can experience ever deeper and deeper levels of that aspect of the universal truth that we call God, which is universal peace. And that peaceful consciousness is our nature. So why aren't we experiencing our nature as peace? Because we have become distracted by the agitations of the lives that we live, the environmental inputs that we experience up to this time in this lifetime. And as yogis, we can also recognize that we have within us samskars. We have karmas from the past, commitments of energy for various likes and dislikes, reactions to previous experiences. We carry all that stuff. So when you, it can happen at the end of the day, you're lying in bed, you want to go to sleep, but what are you thinking about? All of the problems of the day, especially if you've had a bad day. And you, in your mind, it is circling this, oh, what am I going to do about this? And what am I going to do about that? And oh, you feel this pressure. And then, oh, and I've got to figure out what to do tomorrow. All of these things. And these are the things that are visible in our consciousness right in that moment. We don't always pay attention to the invisible stuff. You wouldn't think that do you remember that you carry in your consciousness that book that you bought 10 years ago that's on the shelf in the back room that you haven't seen in 5 years? That's still being carried by your consciousness. That all of the possessions that we have, all of the things that we have, the things that we do, we carry all of that in here. And it becomes, it's like saying, okay, I want to go running, but I'm going to put a backpack on and carry an extra, 50 kilos. Now let's go jogging. Now, when we meditate, when we commune to the level of effectiveness that we practice this, we take the backpack off. We begin to separate ourselves from the burden of all that stuff. And so when you meditate, essentially in the beginning, it's not that you're taking in greater levels of peace, it's that you're just unburdening yourself from all that stuff. All of the things that we carry. But the experience of deep inner peace is not just getting rid of all of those things that hold us back, but it's actually increasing the ability to perceive that flow of energy, that accessibility. If God is infinite, God is, and we describe God as power, the power of life itself. That's pretty powerful. That's energy. That's an incredible flow of power. And when we consciously get rid of our stuff and begin to enter into that universal flow, and this, of course, this is what's so great about surfing. Sort of the analogy of surfing is so fantastic because you've got energy. Waves are just energy. They're flowing through an outward form, but they're energy. And you align yourself with that energy and you ride the wave. You ride the wave and you gotta keep your balance. It's easy to become distracted and then you lose the opportunity to ride that wave. The wave that we're trying to ride is we can describe it as twofold. One is that life itself has two waves. It has the wave of life that's flowing away from peace, and then there's a wave that's flowing towards peace. These two forces, prakriti and aprakriti, outward flowing nature, inward flowing nature. And we need to consciously align ourselves with that flow that's going back to universal peace. Now, as a part of that, we have the guru, we have the masters. The masters are there to are you starting to tip? Okay, here, wait. And when you see young people who are just learning how to surf, Sometimes the instructor will not even get on a surfboard, but go out where he can just barely touch the bottom. And then put the newcomer on the surfboard, and then when a wave comes, they'll push them into the wave. Help them get the right timing and get it all going. And in this way, it's a good example of how, in that case, it's visible, but for us, it's invisible. But it's nonetheless incredibly powerful. And we've all experienced this. Everybody who has come to this path, who come onto any path, can look back and see how some circumstance in their life shifted. Some opportunity presented itself, and that was the beginning of their connection to the spiritual path that they followed. And when you see this happening in so many lives, you realize this is not accidental. This is the invisible becoming visible in a very practical way. So peace is partially getting rid of the stuff that holds us back, and then it's also entering into that universal presence of peace. And this is really what we do in the spiritual life. You could really say that these two processes are what we're constantly working with. We're trying to cut the ties, cut our attachments, our preconceptions, the thoughts that are holding us back, that I am only this. Whatever this might be, I have to be upset when people don't do what I want. I have to be upset when the food burns. I have to be. We think this is normal. I have to keep up with the neighbors. I have to act in the ways that other people, that will be pleasing to them rather than that which I know to be true. Sometimes when we please others, it's good. But sometimes we do things because they think it's right, not because we think it's right. And we need to learn to be free from the imposition of the will of others to make our own conscious choices. That's freedom. We don't want to be free to do what others tell us to do. Many people think of the master as someone who stands around telling everybody what to do. That isn't true. What the master does is give you suggestions about how to improve your own self-awareness. And depending on your nature, they may have to do it more vigorously than with other people. Yoganandaji said, I prefer to teach with my eyes. I prefer to teach with my eyes. But he could yell. He could give it to him, Every parent knows what I'm talking about. The key is to understand that peace is a universal reality that is our birthright. If you don't feel peaceful, it's because you're not connecting to something that is an essential part of your own true reality. And the only reason that we don't experience it is because we don't choose it. We consciously choose to live in the limitations of our connections to outwardness. We have to withdraw from that. One of the most powerful tools that we have, the solution to all life's dilemmas, essentially, Kriya Yoga. The practice of Kriya Yoga begins to disconnect you from all of those outward ties and draws you into that positive flow of divine presence. The calmer you become, the more you can perceive of what's there, was always there, always will be there, our true nature. But we have to consciously choose it. And this is something that, of course, is a challenge because life is going, hello, come on, participate. But the most real, the most beneficial way to participate in life is on the inside. And from that inner connection, all other successes can come. But outward success without inner peace, worthless. Yeah, your body will be a little more comfortable. And the quality of your stimulation will be a little higher. Your TV will be nicer than the little one. But I remember when I was surfing in Hawaii, people always make a big deal about, in America, about people who are homeless, they live in their cars. Of course, some of the cars that people, motorhomes are quite plush. But they're usually talking about somebody living in a little car, not in a motorhome. And I said, well, this is so terrible. I lived in my car in Hawaii. I lived right on the beach that I would go surfing at. And the back seat would lay down, and there was just enough room I could sleep all stretched out. I couldn't have at that time in my life, I couldn't think of a better, more luxurious way to live. And I had no worries. The only challenge I had in the morning was to check and see if the waves were good. I had no other problems. My life was so simple. And yet even that I gave up because I didn't have peace. You never get peace from outward comforts. Master even described the magnetic attraction of outward comforts as one of the ways that Maya tries to hold us back. So we have to recognize that being comfortable, we follow the path of simplicity. That means moderation. Be reasonably comfortable, but don't be deluded by it. You don't need the top model. If the master had this, remember the story about the coat? Somebody gave him a coat, it was too nice. He said, Lord, you got to take it away, this is too nice. and God did. So this is the recognition of how easy it is, and so often we're not paying attention. We get a little comfortable. You start to feel a little peaceful. Well, that's not so bad. Oh, that's a nice chair. Well, let's get the good chair, And it's not wrong. I mean, I went to the shop one day and Swami bought the biggest, most expensive TV in the store at Chroma. They're not the bargain store either. And he didn't shop. He just went out and bought it. He says, oh, that's big. Let's get that. I was used to, we have these preconceptions. So here I've just said, don't do that. And Swami went and did it. You have to take it into account, the totality, the reality of what's going on. Who are you? What stage are you at? Is this going to be bothersome for you or not? Or Rajasi was a wealthy man. He was in samadhi on a daily basis. So he used to send someone out to purchase the highest quality fruits. He liked papayas. So Durga Mata would go out and buy a crate of papayas and cut them open and eat some of it until she found a good one. And then only give him the good ones. Which is incredibly extravagant. Not your preconception about a yogi being, unattached to the flavor. But he was free. He could have that little indulgence because it wasn't going to trap him. But you've seen, the classic in the movies where you see the rich guy who's got all of the highest quality foods, and he's, grumpy people, not peaceful people. And when they bring in the other people, they all yell at him, throw him in jail. Those guys are never gracious. They're never happy. And yes, it's the movies, but the movies reflect a lot of the consciousness. Well, they do reflect the consciousness of the people who make them. And yes, they're exaggerated in many ways, but they still have elements of truth in them. So, choosing peace. If we want to experience inner peace, we have to choose it and then practice it. Practice attuning yourself to it. Recognize when you're not feeling it, and then practice things that will help you to feel it more deeply. Chanting, meditation, environment. Remember, environment stronger than will. If you hang out with peaceful people, you're going to be more peaceful. That's the easiest way to get used to being peaceful. And then when you're not with the group, you'll begin to recognize, oh, I'm losing my peace. I'm not as peaceful. And then you can combat that by being aware that it's an issue, and then practice the things that we do in order to reconnect on a deeper level to that peace. Okay.